he writes that when we said in the Rambam, the Amud HaChochmot and Yesod HaYesodot, right? We said the foundation of all foundations and the pillar of which all science stands is Leida, to know Sheyesh Sham Matzui Rishon. You have to know there's the first being, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he says, what does it mean that's a pillar of sciences? Which means that whenever a person studies his sciences, he studies in school, anatomy, medicine, psychology, history, political science, sociology, anything, you should know that the pillar of all that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That person has to know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made all of this. And therefore, even if you become such an expert and you learn and you study these things and you see how the professors of the world explain things, you should know that deep down behind all of this is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. So therefore, that way a person will appreciate the science and appreciate the wisdom. But at the end of the day, he'll never forget who he came from. He'll never forget who made all of this. And the same thing is a person has to remind himself always in life. And they'll explain a lot of the things that we don't understand in the world. For example, their knowledge and their view is very limited. There's many organs in the body, for example, that they say don't have any purpose. And the only reason we have them is because of evolution, or because it was left over from the places or the environments we used to live in. For many years they believed that the tonsils are not needed and they used to remove them. For many years they think that today still the appendix is worthless and then you have to remove them. But obviously HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a purpose for all these things. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made all these things. So therefore, even if we don't understand why it is and therefore we think we should remove it, at the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made all this stuff. So therefore, that's the key that they're missing. They're missing that there's a wisdom and there's a creator who did everything for a purpose. And therefore, when you study, when you go to college and you go to their class and all these things, you have to not forget that at the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is behind all of this, and therefore that'll fill in a lot of empty spots for you. And the same thing applies to any type of wisdom. For example, in a person's in the history, a person studies history. You could study history and know all the ins and outs and say, oh, this is the reason that happened, this is the reason that happened. But at the end of the day, behind the scenes is what? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Someone told me, history is his story. His story, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's story of the world, that he made all these things happen at the end of the day. And therefore, a person has to know you'll fill in a lot of holes that are missing, and we don't understand fully why everything happened. We will, in Mashiach times, we'll look back and say, as we were like dreaming, now we understand why everything happened, now we woke up and see the truth. But at the end of the day, anything a person is involved in, he has to always have the back of his mind of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who made all this. A person who goes to business and he says, oh, this is a supply chain, this is the supplier, this is the seller, this is the in-between, this is why we get our parnasah. And I have a good supplier, I have a good location, I have a good employees, I have a good clientele. At the end of the day, that's all true. But behind the scenes is always HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, a person has to make sure, in this Rosh Chodesh Elul, we have to work on going through our day, going through our studies, going through our business, and to remember, yes, there's a reason and there's an explanation that the professors give, that our friends give, that we give. But at the end of the day, who made all those things come to be? Who runs everything behind the scenes? HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself.